Hey guys. So, I had another issue getting a story ready in time for today. Problems with permission and people not responding in time, which is totally my fault because apparently I waited too long to do that. But kind of like the last time that happened, I originally wasn't going to post anything today, but I feel like I've canceled on you guys kind of a lot recently, so I decided instead to put the time that I was going to spend editing into editing a different kind of video today. So just a disclaimer for those of you who are pretty much only here for the narration part of my channel, which obviously there's no problem with, this is not that. This video is going to be more of a how-to, so it'll be a look into sort of the process that I use in creating each of my videos, like more or less, sort of. So basically a couple weeks ago, I screen recorded the entire process from the beginning to almost the end. I didn't record the part where I posted on YouTube and stuff, but pretty much from beginning to end of editing Pool by BlueNebbish. So I'll put a timestamp to that below for those of you who want to skip this sort of intro part. Really, before we get into the video, I just want to explain myself a little bit. I know that I've made you guys a lot of promises, some of which I haven't been very great at keeping, and others which I have kept but have been late or flaky on it. If you're a patron, you've been missing some blooper reels recently, and, you know, just for my channel in general, I've been promising a lot of stuff that I'm gonna do for 5K, some surprises that I haven't actually followed up on, things like that. I know that there hasn't been a lot of extra content out on here and on Patreon, and I haven't really been involved with social media very much. A lot of you are waiting on answers from me on my email, Discord, Twitter, stuff like that. And I'm really not proud of that. I've used a lot of excuses for that kind of thing. A lot of the time, I really am just busy and stuff, but sometimes it's just, I don't know, where my attention is at, my headspace is at. Basically, if you're one of the people waiting on me, just gentle reminders, people. I don't know, I thought I was going to have more time during summer, especially because of quarantine, not being able to go anywhere, not taking classes or whatever, and honestly, I do have more time than I do during the school semester. Really, the main reason that I've been so distant from this kind of thing lately is because my mental health isn't where it should be, and I feel like it's kind of time to sort of address that more, because I don't really know why I've been hiding it that much. It's not anything to be ashamed of. I'm literally a psychology student. I know that. Yeah. So that's kind of what's just been happening with me recently. I'm like okay. Like I'm okay overall. I feel like I should specify that. But recently I've just been lacking a lot of motivation for this stuff. I think it's because it's like a mixture of isolation from quarantine and not having a set routine for things. Because my mind's been totally all over the place. For those of you who don't know, I do have an anxiety disorder. It makes me want to have things on a consistent schedule, so when there's no way for me to plan out my days, or when there's nothing really I can fill my time with, which is what's happening right now, it kind of gets really hard for me to do anything at all. So I've kind of been shutting down a little bit. And I know that for YouTube, you know, I make videos every Tuesday, that's the whole thing. As you'll see, the editing process is pretty rigorous, so that is kind of a consistent thing, but sometimes that's a little too much for me. So yeah, I'm hoping once I'm finally able to go back to school, I'll be more on track. For a lot of April and May, when online classes were happening, I'd even go so far as to say I was in more of a depressive state of mind than anything else. So I realize that I've been withdrawn and more isolated than I normally am. Part of it is I do feel really guilty about that. I also just am not an online person in general. It's actually more draining for me to talk online than it is for me to talk in real life. Like having conversations and stuff. I'm not sure why that's the case. I feed off of people's energy a lot, just as a person, and so I don't know, it's kind of like this shift in energy almost, where if I'm not in person with somebody, it is more draining than energizing, if that makes absolutely any sense at all. I don't know. So, that's, I guess, why I've been doing sort of bare minimum. And again, I do feel really bad about that. I know you guys are super sweet and supportive, so you probably won't hold it against me, but I tend to hold it against myself. Especially when I'm not acting like myself and I'm feeling anxious about it, so I don't know, I guess in short, I can't really keep track of the things I'm supposed to be doing on top of taking care of myself properly, so that's kind of why I've been acting the way I've been acting. Anyway, I'm sure you guys are tired of excuses by now. That's a lot of explanation for basically nothing. I want to thank my patrons again for, for some reason sticking by me even though I've absolutely done nothing to deserve it in the past few months, like absolutely nothing at all. Thank you to everyone who's been supportive and kind and patient with my flakiness, now and always. I'm a perfectionist, like I said, and kind of an overall anxious mess, so your encouragement really, really does actually mean a lot to me. So, as per usual, I'm going to try to work on the extra stuff, but basically I'm just trying to focus on the basics right now so I don't let those slip too, and I don't let my taking care of myself kind of take a back burner to those things, so just keep being patient with me. Like I said, gentle reminders. I won't be mad if you email me a second time if I never answered you. I would urge you to not take it personally, because I really don't mean it like that. I just, I'm trying my best out here, so keep that in mind if you're kind of angry with me right now. But yeah, so that's that. Thanks for listening. I love you guys, and please enjoy this random how-to video. Okay, so, as I said before, this is me starting from the very beginning of the process of recording Pool. So, say hello to VoiceOver Lucy, because I could not sit still for this long with my mic plugged in. My attention span is not that long, so I basically just edited the whole thing and now I'm doing like a half-scripted voiceover thing, so anyway, the whole editing process that you're about to see was over the span of 2 days, and including breaks like where I go eat or text or whatever, the whole thing took about 12 hours total, and you will see why in a second. Okay, so first things first, you're gonna see me use Audacity before I use anything else. And what you'll see is me dragging the audio in and letting it load up. But the thing is, I tend to multitask on this part because like I said, I don't like sitting around and waiting. So you'll also see me opening up Premiere and Audition, which are the other two programs that I'm using today to get started on, other audio stuff, visual stuff while I wait for my Audacity things to load. When I'm in Audacity, I usually have to amplify my audio to whatever the max is before it peaks the microphone. So the first thing I do is I go to all the places where my audio is particularly loud for whatever reason, and I either cut it out or make it quieter so that the audio is a little bit more even. Sometimes those happen when I'm too close, but most of the time it's when I'm tapping the microphone to test that the audio is actually coming through the microphone and not through my computer microphone, which has happened. The next step that you'll see is noise reduction. So you'll see me highlighting little bits of blank space, and that's because I'm listening for a section of audio that has just the background noise. So I take that and I sample it, and Audacity will get rid of it for me. I usually have to apply the noise reduction twice because I found that's what helps me get the audio perfectly clear and separate from the background. So during the first time it runs, which is literally like a minute, you'll see me get bored hella fast and switch right over to Pixabay. Pixabay is the website that I use to get my thumbnail pictures and my background videos. So here I'm going to be looking up a background video to play while the narration is happening. Sometimes this takes way longer than it is going to take here because I have to think of a more abstract but related concept to look up. Sometimes I have to go to Videasy, which is a different video website that I use sometimes. But thankfully Pool is pretty self-explanatory, so it's not that hard for me to think of the concept this time around. I also realized after the fact that I'm pretty sure I used this particular video in a short story, like Halloween video already, but I didn't remember that at the time, and I also don't care that much, so it's fine. So after that, I start up Premiere, and I go ahead and make the file. Obviously it's called Pool to make things like infinitely easier on myself. I have a preset for Premiere that makes it into the standard YouTube size, which is something I did not do in my first video, but thankfully figured out by the second time around. So the very first thing I do when it loads all the way up, which takes forever, is I go and get my intro and disclaimer clips, which I have to adjust in volume a little bit because I accidentally made them too loud, and that's just the way things are now. So the intro and disclaimer that you see at the beginning of every video, I just insert those, space them out appropriately, and then after that I put in the background video that I just got from Pixabay. The video part, all in all, is pretty easy. I just have to make it fade to black, and then I have to resize it to fit the screen. And probably one of the hardest parts about getting the video together is figuring out how to loop it in the cleanest way possible without making it look too obvious that I looped it. I don't like when looped videos just cut. I don't know, I don't like making it super obvious. Sometimes I just copy and paste the video and reverse every other one, so the clip just goes back and forth. That's usually more if it's a movement shot, but in cases like this, I use what's called a film dissolve, which basically transitions the video clip into the next one with a fade, so it doesn't just do that random jump thing. After I do that, I basically just do it over and over and over until it's at where I sort of estimate the video is going to end. Usually I'm wrong about that, but it literally doesn't matter because I just fix that when the editing is over. Then I add the text that goes over the video. The title is just plain text that I have fade in with the video. But the author has a random preset with the lines on the bottom and top, and it has like a bouncy kind of transition. I just got this from Premiere. It just like came pre-programmed in and I just thought it was cool. I make it come on with whatever beat of music I feel fits best in between when the video fades in and when the story starts. In terms of the font and color of the text, it sort of changes every time depending on the background and like the feel or theme of the story I'm working on. I kind of don't have a set way of doing that, it just comes to me as it happens. And if I don't find a font that speaks to me or is aesthetically pleasing with the background, I just go and pick a new one. I use the website DaFont for that, and I pick ones that are in the public domain for obvious reasons. Not trying to get in trouble here. In this case, the ones that I had worked perfectly fine, so I went ahead and adjusted them, changed the color to fit, that sort of thing. This part is just me adjusting shadows and stuff to give it more of a dramatic and like less cloudy effect on the text, and then I just go ahead and expand it to last the entire video. This is the part where I remember that my audio was doing a noise reduction thing, so I go and do the second one, and then I move on to find some music. Honestly, I'm kind of addicted to the work of Lucas King, so all of what you're seeing here in terms of music is his channel. It usually takes me a while to find the right song, and sometimes I have to use another platform like Muse Channel or Incompetech, but usually I can find a great song that fits from Lucas King. The way I look for songs is also a little abstract. I'm terrible with music, so I never really have anything in mind when I start. I just have like a vague idea of like the feel I want it to be. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. Basically, for all my stories, I want a song, usually a piano song because those are easier, that's not too fast and is calm enough that it doesn't overpower my voice. In this particular story, I wanted a little bit more of an upbeat song because the first half of the story isn't even really that scary, so I didn't want an overly creepy song for this one. For some reason, I take a break midway through listening to my song to go back to Audacity, and again, I'm making the audio's volume more even because my noise reduction is finished by now. Then I amplify the entire thing as high as it'll go, and go back to Lucas to finish listening. This is the song that I want, so once I find it, I have to use a YouTube to Mp3 Converter to actually put it into Premiere. Lucas King's channel, last time I checked, lets people use this music royalty-free, as long as you credit, which I do. But I haven't found any download links for some reason, so I just used the website to get it into the program correctly. It looks a little bit shady, but I swear that last time I checked, this was fine. Sometimes when I'm editing though, I realize that the song I picked doesn't work for some reason. Maybe it's too fast or too intense or whatever, so I have to go back and repeat the music finding process until I find a song that'll actually fit what I'm going for. Basically with the music, it's kind of about what I feel will sound good in the moment, so I definitely just play all of that by ear as I go, which you'll see me do later on. Once I export the audio from Audacity, I then have to bring it into Audition, which is probably the newest step that I've learned to take on in the audio editing. Basically, in Audition, I've preset a de-esser, so when I load it in, I can just quickly apply it and export it again. For those of you who don't know, that's going to make my S sounds sound less sharp. Usually my preset works pretty well for all of my audio, but if it didn't for some reason, I can just fine-tune the de-esser to that audio specifically, and I'm sure it would work a little bit better. But it saves me time and stress to use an all-encompassing preset for the time being. So once I have the final version of this audio, I put it in Premiere with everything else that I've done so far. In this case, you can see me cut out the intro, which I then put into a separate sequence, which means that apparently it was funny enough to put in a future blooper reel. I don't even remember what I said, but I'm gonna trust past me on that. So this is where the process of editing starts to get pretty repetitive, but basically what you're gonna see me do now is start to cut up my audio. I pretty much just use the razor tool to literally cut out any silent spaces in my audio, and then after I do that, I go in and fully delete them all. The reason I do this is to cut out any breaths or random noises or breaks or whatever in my audio, and I honestly just find that it saves me time in the long run than doing that as I go. And on top of that, I can also just listen to music or a podcast or whatever in the background because I kind of don't really have to listen to this part unless I'm determining if something is a random sound that I have to cut out versus actual speech, or figuring out if something is a blooper. This part probably does take the longest time other than the actual editing part, but it's worth it in the end to get the audio sounding cleaner and more professional. And honestly, it's usually just more busy work than anything else. It'll also show me a more realistic version of how long the video is gonna actually be. As you can see, without any cutting or deleting, the full audio is about 45 minutes. But by the time I'm finished with the entire video, it's actually more around half an hour. A combination of random empty space, breaks where I drink water, maybe respond to texts, whatever, pause for background noise to go away, and bloopers and mistakes that I make end up making up the parts that I later end up deleting. And also sometimes I'll read sentences multiple times to get the best version, so duplicates obviously also get deleted, and it ends up cutting a lot of time out of my audio. So after I finally finish cutting, I can delete all the blank space that I found. This leaves only the important pieces, which lets me move everything around basically however I want when I'm listening back or deleting things. Again, I kind of just find that this method is easiest when taking out blank space, bloopers, and breaks. If not pretty time consuming, but I can just listen to something in the background while I do that, so it ends up working out. Once all of that is done, I can actually start listening to what I'm doing. And this is the main part of my editing because I'm basically just listening to everything that I have, deleting duplicate takes until I get the best version of a phrase or sentence, and I'm spacing out all of my audio to make my pacing consistent and to combine phrases that I might have taken a break in between to make the full sentence. I try to leave breaks between paragraphs or new thoughts in a story so it doesn't move too fast. And I'm sure I could find a faster way to do this, but I kind of prefer to do it manually because it really lets me tailor everything to how I want the story to sound. Also, I really just have not found an alternative method yet, so hit me up. Sometimes you'll see me link audio together with something called a constant power transition, or I'll put a fade at the beginning or end of an audio clip. And there are kind of a few reasons why I do this. So when I'm recording a story, I try to listen for when my mouth makes any random pops or clicks, but sometimes I don't hear them all. So when I find one in my story, I try to cut it out to the best of my ability to make the audio sound better. I usually just cut out the click and use a constant power transition to sort of bridge the audio so that it doesn't sound like I cut out part of the word, but you also can't hear the click anymore. Sometimes this works better than other times. Sometimes it really doesn't sound like I edited it at all and the click is completely gone. And other times it's literally better to just leave the click in because the word sounds disjointed otherwise. And it just sounds worse, draws more attention to it. It's really a case-by-case basis, but all in all I try to get rid of as many as possible. Usually if you see me putting a fade in, it's kind of to do the same thing, just for the beginning or end of a sentence. Other times it's because some background noise has made it in, so when the sentence ends, it's super obvious that I cut that audio, so I have to fade it out to make it less obvious or get rid of the background noise as much as I can. In this particular story, you might see me bounce back to Audacity a few times during this process, and honestly it's because there are children in this piece, so once or twice I have the audio overlap when multiple children say things at the same time, which makes a lot more sense if you've already heard the story. So sometimes I'll go into Audacity to change the pitch of what I say so it at least adds some layer to the overlap and it isn't just me saying the same thing in the same voice multiple times, because that would sound very weird. Here you can also see I messed up and I changed the pitch in the whole audio file, which is something I really try not to do. And the reason for that is because making the pitch higher or lower tends to shorten or lengthen the audio clip. And so when I do that to the main file and then resave, all the cutting I did when I save it like that is completely shifted and off, which is super annoying to fix. So if I change the pitch of something in Audacity, I usually try and make it a separate project to just insert separately, which you can see I realized I needed to do here. I can also change pitch in Premiere, but for some reason children's voices sound better when I do it in Audacity. It might just be that the change pitch function is like more fine-tuned in Audacity or something, so it sounds more realistic. I don't even really know for sure. Again, it's a case-by-case basis whenever I need to do that. Sometimes it just sounds better than others. I don't know what to tell you. You can also see me looping the music as I go, rather than all at once. And like I said before, it's because I'm more or less playing that by ear. It does get annoying every once in a while, but I like to be sure that the music fits the piece at the time that I'm playing it, and because there's so much that I have to delete, it's hard to estimate where I'm gonna need the more dramatic parts of the music to be, so it's easier to just do it as I go. I do try to use the same song for the entire piece, so that it doesn't sound super disjointed. I think there have only been a few times where I've used multiple songs in one video, And honestly, I don't even remember which ones those were. So, yeah, they're very few and far between. Once I get to the end, spacing everything out the way that I want it to sound, I have to let the music fade out naturally, and then I adjust the video and text to fade out alongside the music the way that I'd like it to. Then I have to add the outro and adjust the credits to include the music I chose and the author of that story. You'll see Pixabay is already on there, my sound effects things like Zap Splat, because I already use things from those in my intro, outro, disclaimer, whatever. So those are permanently in the credits. After I finish getting the audio exactly how I want it to be, I move on to the sound effects. Sometimes I add sound effects as I go, and sometimes if there's going to be a lot of sound design, like in this case, I'll literally just leave it as a whole separate step like this so I don't have to multitask. If there's only a few random small sounds throughout the video, then I'll just do it all at once. Like I said with this case, I have to do it separately. In this story, there's a lot of sound effects because I have to add the water ambiance, splashing, child's play in the background, and then later on there are some scary parts underwater, sounds like that. All of those things each have their own sound, so they're a whole separate sound effect. It's just a lot easier to add them all at the same time. What you'll see me use most often to find these sound effects is freesound.org, but I also use Zapsplat. And really the difference is that on Freesound I tend to find a lot of sounds on there that include people, like the sound of child playing, screaming, crying, laughing, all the sounds that have humans in them basically. And then on Zapsplat I tend to find more object sound effects like doors closing, glass breaking, the splashing, metal, wood, all that kind of stuff. Mostly I find those on Zapsplat. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't. It's really just case by case, but generally that's how I distinguish them. You'll also see in the folders that I have for both of them that I already have a lot of sound effects saved, and that's pretty much my whole collection, give or take some bigger files that I wanted to delete to free up space. But those are all gathered over my entire YouTube career. They don't take up a ton of space most of the time, so they're just chillin'. It's basically my sound library for what I already have. Searching for sound effects that I don't already have is pretty difficult because I'm a perfectionist, so I really want to get the right sound for what I have in mind, and the right sound that fits the description of the story, which isn't always possible. I don't really have the resources to record my own sound effects, so Freesound and Zapsplat are my lifesavers for sure. It takes a lot of layering and volume balancing to get the sound effects to sound the way I want them to without overpowering my narration, especially if there's ambiance in the background. And I still don't think I've mastered the volume balancing yet, but overall it kind of just takes a lot of practice and patience to find what I need for these stories. Sometimes I literally just have to skip over a sound if I'm really struggling to find something for it, because it can get super frustrating and I will just rage quit. Sometimes I need to think outside the box and repurpose a sound to make it work, but usually I find that I can get some pretty good sound design for me being an amateur who's using free audio. Again, you'll see me sometimes opening things in Audacity, and that plays into the whole repurposing thing. Sometimes if I change the pitch, speed, or echo of something, it'll sound more like something else. I think in this case I was trying to get an adult to sound more like one of the children because I couldn't find a good child crying clip. I ended up just finding a lot of infants crying, which is not what I wanted. So I was trying to change the pitch to get an adult to sound like a child. I had to keep going back and forth because it really just was not sounding right. It doesn't really work like that, but eventually I think I found an audio that fit more with what I was trying to do, so it ended up working out. Like I said, this story in particular required a lot of sound design with sounds that I didn't previously have. So that's why it's taking a while to get all of it together. You'll see a lot of layers and a lot of sounds that play throughout the whole thing. Those are like the sounds of the pool, the swimming, breathing, running, splashing, stuff like that. Most of the time it takes less time than this, but sometimes it takes even longer. It kind of depends on the story, what I already have in my library, and how easy the sound effects in question are to find somewhere else. After the sound effects though, I'm done with the video. Intro, disclaimer, video, text, audio, sound effect, outro. I don't think I recorded this, but I try to listen to it first before I export just to make sure that I didn't leave anything in that I shouldn't have. And then I put it in the media encoder to go ahead and just load that up, get that done. But that's just the video for Patreon. Now I have to get the video up for my channel, which has a different outro, but more importantly, I now need to make the trailer. For this, I find a different but still related background video that I don't put text over, but I usually use the same music from the video I just made to make things easier on myself. I used to find entirely different music for my trailers, but it took so much time I just decided not to do that because I already handpicked the music for the video. I don't know why I let that go to waste. I have to edit the music down to shorten it and make it more dramatic. And again, it's sort of just about finding the audio that'll make everything sound appealing. I usually go and find some more of the intro parts of the story and I put those in first to set the scene a little bit, and then maybe I'll go add something from the middle or end to give a cliffhanger without spoiling anything. I think the strategy I take with finding audio for my trailers is if I were using the words already in the story to create sort of like a summary that would hook the reader in, almost like the back of a book would. Ultimately, it's just me trying my best to make something dramatic. I'm not very good with trailers, to be honest, but I guess the point is to sort of hint at the next video and also encourage people to be patrons to go ahead and be able to listen to it already. Some trailers are easier to do than others, but most of the time it's just about tracking down some of the more interesting pieces of audio and sometimes some sound effects. After I get those pieces in and the video is clipped correctly, I have to make the thumbnail to put at the end of the trailer. The thumbnail is also very in difficulty to make, but I usually just have to find a relevant picture on Pixabay again and upload it into Photoshop, just to get that started. As you can see with this one, the first thing I do is completely fail at making this random hand red, like the monster in the story. But I can't figure out how to use the tool I'm trying to use. I don't even remember what it's called. Eventually it works out, I think. There's probably an easier way I could have done it, but you know what? It's fine. The first thing I do is I make 3 different versions of the thumbnail. One with a Patreon early access banner for patrons, one with an available now on Patreon ad for the trailer, and one plain one for everything else. Then, just like with the video, I add text and the author, though I usually try to make the fonts and colors different than what I used in the video, which is sometimes easier said than done. I also add a background shadow to the text that I use, and do this like weird horizontal stripe thing with it. I literally don't even know where I got that idea from, but you know, it ended up working okay, so that's all that really matters. After I'm done with the title and author, I have to add the Spirit Voices logo to the bottom right corner. And for this thumbnail, I also add a vignette. Did I pronounce that right? Oh, I hope I pronounced that right. To give it some dimension and lighting, just to make it look less flat, I guess. Once I save all 3 versions of the thumbnail, I put the 2 I need into the trailer, and I sort of just make them fade in and out together as necessary. Then I have to insert the part of the outro where I have to add the end screen on YouTube, and I let that all fade out with the music. Then the trailer's done. To make the video for my channel, I just take the video I made for Patreon last week, cut out the outro, and add in my Patreon thank you clip, which I already have made. And then a slightly different outro with the next week part added on. And then I insert the trailer I just made with the end screen part at the end. So this is where the visual footage sort of cuts off, because everything after this is basically just me letting Media Encoder do its thing and export both videos that I need, and then the only thing I have to do from there is upload them to YouTube. I have a special Word document that holds my description template, and I kind of just mess around with the tags until I find a variation I like, usually including No Sleep, Terror Tuesday, Creepypasta, Spirit Voices, that kind of thing. Otherwise, that's about it. I had to write a script for this video, and it ended up being about 12 pages, which is way longer than I expected it to be, but I guess this process does take some explaining after all. It's sort of second nature to me now since I've done it for quite a long time, almost every week, but I don't know. There could definitely be some things that I'm missing out on, things that I could add or do differently, things that might help streamline my process a little bit. This is definitely a process that I've come to after like 2 years at this point of making mistakes and figuring out how to fix them. So I don't know, maybe there's a lot to be desired. Again, I'm kind of just taking it as I go. Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you all officially for 5K subscribers. I'm hoping, like I said, to do an extra fun video on top of my normal schedule when I have the time to put that together. And maybe I can manage a live stream or 2 sometime soon. I really don't know. And also, let me know if you want to see anything else like this on my channel. I'm definitely open to suggestions and ideas, cause Lord knows sometimes I am lacking on the creativity scale. But yeah, I love you all. Thanks for watching and listening to me ramble. Sorry if you hated it. And I will see you next week with a brand new story that I will be making using the process you just saw. Have a great week. Bye, guys. A huge thank you to all of my poltergeists. Alex Schaefer, Bobby Tripp, Calderin, Daniel O'Connell, Erica Warren, Forever, Shadow Blackhawk, JTX31, Mark Zapan, Brian Horn, Spirit Father, Stephen Swiftbird, Twisted Skipster, Alternative Night, and Michael Folks. Your donations and continued support are so appreciated. So, as always, thank you. From the very bottom of my heart.